There's a number floating around that makes Canada look incredibly rich. As of late 2025, the total household wealth in this country hit a record $18.59 trillion, dollars, and the average Canadian household is now worth about $1.08 million. Dollars. So if everyone's a millionaire, why do so many people feel broke at the end of every month? Why does it feel like you're working harder than your parents did, earning more on paper than they ever made, and still watching your bank account hit zero before the next paycheck lands? Here's the trick almost nobody explains. When people say Canada has roughly 2.1 million millionaires, they're counting net worth. Net worth includes everything: your investments, your savings, your pension, and the big one, the equity locked inside your home. And in this country, the home is doing most of the heavy lifting. So the real question isn't how many Canadians are millionaires. The real question is how many are millionaires without counting the house they live in, because that's the number that actually tells you whether someone is wealthy or just sitting inside an expensive box. When you strip the family home out of the equation and look only at money that's actually free, money in investments, registered accounts, and cash, the picture changes dramatically. The pool of Canadians with $1 million in liquid, investable assets is closer to 764,000 people. Suddenly, the picture of a millionaire nation collapses into something much smaller and much more honest. Roughly 4 out of 5 so called millionaires owe their status to a house, not to a portfolio. And researchers have a name for this. They call them hidden millionaires. These are people who never picked a stock, never studied investing, never thought of themselves as wealthy at all. They just bought a home years ago, paid the mortgage every month, put a little into their RRSP, and woke up one day on top of $1 million asset they can't actually spend without selling the roof over their head. And here's what makes it so cruel. On paper, that person looks like they won the game. Their friends assume they're set. Their own family thinks they're sitting on a fortune. But inside, they feel the exact same squeeze as everyone else, watching the cost of food, gas, and insurance climb every single month. The $1 million is real, but it's frozen. It's trapped inside four walls they can't sell without becoming homeless. That gap between how rich you look and how free you actually feel is the stress eating away at millions of Canadians right now, and almost nobody talks about it out loud. There's a difference between looking rich and being free. A $900,000 home with $100,000 in savings makes you a millionaire on a spreadsheet, but you can't retire on a house you need to live in. You can't eat drywall. And here's the part that should grab your attention. A 2026 BMO survey found most Canadians believe they'll need around $1.7 million to retire comfortably. So even a lot of these paper millionaires are short of what they'll actually need, before we even talk about inflation eating away at it for 30 years. Now look at what's really been building wealth lately, because this changes how you should think about your own money. For decades, Canadians leaned on real estate to get richer. Buy a house, wait, watch it climb. But that engine stalled. In 2025, the National Home Price Index actually fell about 4%, and real estate subtracted from the average household's wealth. Meanwhile, financial assets, the stuff you can actually move and use, jumped roughly 10% in a single year. The Canadian stock market, the S&P/TSX, returned an enormous 32%. The people who got wealthier in 2025 weren't the ones sitting on home equity. They were the ones who owned financial assets. And look at who that rewarded. Gen X households posted the biggest jump of anyone last year, growing their net worth by 13.6%, because their financial assets ballooned by nearly 20%. Millennials, who hold more of their wealth in real estate, basically went nowhere, their net worth slipping slightly as home values dipped. The difference wasn't age or income, it was what they owned. One group owned assets that compounded on their own. The other group owned a house that sat still while the cost of everything else kept rising. That's exactly why the wealth gap widened. The top 20% of households now hold nearly two-thirds of all the wealth in the country, averaging about $3.5 million each. The bottom 40% hold just 3%, averaging around $81,000. The difference between those two groups isn't luck, and it isn't just a bigger paycheck. It's ownership. The wealthy own assets that grow while they sleep, while everyone else owns a home that's standing still and a paycheck that disappears the moment it arrives. Real wealth isn't the size of your house. It's the size of the money that works for you while you sleep. The home you live in doesn't pay you. It costs you every single month in taxes, repairs, insurance, and interest. But investments, dividends, the money inside your RRSP and your TFSA, those grow whether you're working or not. That's the difference between a hidden millionaire who feels trapped and a free one who actually has options. So, what do you do with this? First, you stop measuring your progress by the number that includes your house. Start tracking your investable net worth instead, the money you'd have if you took the home out of the math. That single shift in how you keep score will change every financial decision you make because you stop celebrating a number you can't spend. Second, you use the two tools the government practically hands you. Your TFSA lets your money grow and come out completely tax free, which makes it the closest thing to a perfect wealth building account this country offers. Your RRSP lowers your tax bill today and lets your investments compound untouched until retirement. Most Canadians treat these like simple savings accounts and let cash sit inside them doing nothing. The wealthy treat them as engines, filling them with investments that grow year after year. And the difference that creates over time is staggering. When your money just sits as cash, it barely moves, and inflation eats away at what it can buy. But when that same money is invested and left to compound, it starts working in the background, earning on top of its own earnings, growing faster the longer you leave it alone. Give it 20 years, and the result isn't a little extra. It can multiply into several times what you put in, without you ever earning a higher salary or working a single extra hour. It's not about how much you make, it's about how long you let your money grow untouched. And it's the single biggest reason some Canadians break free while others stay stuck forever. Third, you do the boring thing that actually works. You live below your means, even as your income rises, because lifestyle creep is the slow leak that drains more millionaires than any market crash ever has. The biggest threat to your future isn't a bad year in the market. It's spending a little more every time you earn a little more, until the raise you fought for vanishes into a bigger car payment and a longer list of subscriptions. The millionaire next door might be more trapped than you are, and the person putting $200 a month into investments with no fancy house to brag about might be the one who actually gets free. You don't need a mansion. You need money that moves. You need assets that don't depend on you selling the place you sleep at night. The home keeps you comfortable today. The portfolio is what buys back your time tomorrow, and time is the one thing you can never earn back once it's gone. So be honest with yourself this week. Pull up your numbers and ask the uncomfortable question. If you took your house completely out of the picture, what would you actually be worth? Whatever that number is, that's your real starting line, not the inflated one the headlines celebrate, the real one. And the good news is that starting line is yours to move every single month with every dollar you put to work. If this changed how you see your own money, do me a favor and hit the like button. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.